The elevator door sighed shut and he stepped into the corridor as if the air itself held its breath. And I knew the moment I saw him that the city would remember this day for a long, cold while. Because in this building, every shadow has a ledger, and every rumor wants a seat at the table. And I am Helena Montez, 35 years old, the one who counts the numbers and the risks, and the quiet little ways a plan becomes power. A senior bank executive who wears a calm like a suit and hides a burning ambition to reshape what a bank can mean for the people who never trusted banks in the first place. And I stood there in my tailored confidence, waiting to hear how far I would go before I learned how much I could bear. And the personal frame for this episode was the old ache I kept locked away, a chapter of betrayal that began with a trust I believed would survive any storm. A trust between my closest ally and the man I believed would stand by me. A man who turned out to be something else. I am Helena Montez, and I am not afraid to admit the truth that lives under the suit. The truth that a woman can want more than status and can still study the numbers until they sing. My hidden ambition, not to accumulate power as a trophy, but to fashion a system where trust becomes a currency that outlasts a single executive. And that is the driver behind every choice I make, even the choice to invite a man who once destroyed my peace to work under my eye. Because in the world I am building, every act of betrayal is a data point, every wound a statistic, every comeback a case study I can leverage to raise others up. And the personal frame remains the betrayal I survived, the memory of my best friend sharing a bed with the man I loved. The night the truth arrived like a faulty wire and sparked a small fire that burned long after the flames had died. And that flame still flickers in me when I stand behind my desk and see my reflection in the glass, a calm surface that conceals a storm. The moment he walked into my project room, a room that had learned to feel the weight of 1,000 decisions in the quiet hum of servers and the soft clack of keyboards, I watched him square his shoulders and pretend that a decade could vanish with a new title. And I listened to the sound of his voice, the same voice that once whispered promises to my face and whispered lies behind my back. And I let the room breathe while I played the role of the cool conductor. Because control is a kind of courage, and I had learned to wield it with care, to let the board see me as the steady hand that never trembles, even when the truth shakes the floor. And I asked him to present the restructuring plan that would shape the next 2 years of growth. A plan that looked flawless on the slides, but carried a weight of old sins in its margins. A plan that would put him in a place where he would have to account for the past in every new decision. A plan that would require him to answer to me, to the number. The work moved with a familiar rhythm, a dance of risk and reward, and I allowed him to set the pace while I kept the tempo. Because the power here is in timing, in choosing exactly when to reveal a truth and when to swallow it. And as days turned into nights that smelled of coffee and old leather, I watched him scramble to prove that he could still be useful, that his old misdeeds had not disqualified him, that a second chance was a real possibility. A dangerous possibility. A possibility I would accept only if it served the larger plan I had carried in my mind since the first time I felt the cold grip of betrayal squeeze my heart. And I did not tell him about the nights I slept with the phone on the nightstand, waiting for the faintest buzz that would remind me the world still had room for mercy. I did not tell him how I counted every silent moment when I looked across the room and saw the space where my friend would have stood if she had not chosen a different path. I did not tell H. And then came the turning point. The moment when the plan began to tilt in my favor, and the room became a stage for something colder and more precise than a simple victory. Because I arranged for a quarterly review that would expose the true cost of his past choices. I gathered the data and the witnesses who would speak in my favor without ever needing to raise a voice. I allowed him to present the arguments he had rehearsed in the mirror every morning for weeks. And I watched him stumble as a single email thread rose from the depths of a forgotten archive, an email that linked his old affair with my best friend to the very decision he wanted to take now, a thread that proved he had lied to both of us, that his loyalty had a price, and the price was always paid in painful clarity. And when the room quieted and the board leaned in with that intense hunger we all carry when we crave truth, I spoke with the calm of a woman who has learned how to survive in rooms that demand you forget murk. What followed was not a grand confession or a fireworks display of retribution, but a quiet, almost ceremonial tightening of the reins. A slow, deliberate move that set the trajectory of his career toward a future that would be less forgiving than the past. Not a broken man, but a cautionary figure in a finance world that thrives on forward motion and ruthless clarity. And I watched him adjust to the new order with a pale quiet that did not require words, a kind of dignity earned through exposure to the harsh light of accountability, while I, Helena Montez, felt the weight of every decision settle into a steady, unshakable truth. Justice can be cold, and it can be fair, and it can be a force that reshapes not only a life, but an entire skyline of possibilities. Because in the end, I did not need to ruin him to feel powerful. I did not need to humiliate him to prove I was the apex predator of this jungle of numbers. I simply needed to align the work with the conscience I had learned to res.